This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I am delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you. Now, I need to have a chat with you about something. And it's crime. Because the FBI is telling us that crime is down. In fact, Kyle Griffin, who is the activist producer at MSNBC, who uses his Twitter account to advance every imaginable left-wing narrative, wants you to know the FBI has announced crime has plummeted in the first quarter of 2024. Murder is down 26.4%. Rape is down 25.7%. Robbery is down 17.8%. Aggravated assault is down 12.5%. Reported property crime is down 15.1%. It sounds amazing, doesn't it? In fact, if you subscribe to the show notes today, there's actually a Wall Street Journal article that also amplifies this particular story that crime is down. This is from the Wall Street Journal today. Homicide rate fell sharply in 2023 after rising during the pandemic. Cities like Houston, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia saw major declines as police step up efforts. The overall trend shows that the factors that contributed to an increase in violent confrontations in the early days of the pandemic are receding. Shootings are falling as gang violence prevention programs get back up and running. Domestic killings have declined. Murders have dropped. In the nation's second largest city, Los Angeles, homicides dropped for a second straight year. A few major cities like Dallas and Washington saw increases in homicides. Killings had declined in Dallas in 21 and 22, and the city was considered to be a model for crime prevention. Killings have gone up in Washington, D.C. Carjackings have gone up in Washington, D.C., but crime is down. Now, there's a problem. There actually is a problem. You know, one of the reasons for a dip in violent crime? 40% of local law enforcement agencies are no longer transmitting their information to the national FBI database. In 2021, 37% of police departments stopped reporting crime data, including Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York. And for other jurisdictions like Baltimore and Nashville, crimes are being underreported or undercounted. So wait a second. They say crime is down, but real crime data collected by the FBI represents only 63% of police departments and overwhelmingly does not include left-wing progressive major city jurisdictions like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Baltimore, and Nashville. Now, to be fair to the Wall Street Journal, they did go to Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles data from the Los Angeles police, not collected by the FBI, does show murders down in Los Angeles. But what's notable here is the National Press Corps is rushing to base their stories on the FBI count that crime is down. And the FBI shows crime is down, but the FBI leaves out 40% of jurisdictions in the country, including the largest jurisdictions in the country of Los Angeles, Chicago, and Nashville. They leave out Baltimore. They leave out, or not Nashville, I said New York, but they leave out Nashville. They leave out Baltimore. Seattle doesn't appear to be in there. Another big city with a crime problem. So they're telling us a bunch of stuff that our lived experience says isn't true. Now, this is the wild, weird thing, and this gets to the economy as well. But there are two stories, just to give you an example of the situation. I want to read you two headlines. They're both from Atlanta. From WSB TV, which is affiliated with my flagship station, WSB Radio. My wife is actually going to be interviewed by him on Friday about her cancer. Here's story one. Both of these stories are today at WSBTV.com. This is just Atlanta. Here's headline one. Suspect in Gwinnett County bus hijacking faces more than 24 charges, including murder. In the last 24 hours. So the details of this story. In Gwinnett County, one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, a large county in metro Atlanta, a man is accused of hijacking a Gwinnett County transit bus, taking multiple people hostage and killing one of them. Now, let me read you a sentence. The man's name is Joseph Greer, and let me read you this sentence, and I quote, Greer, 39, of Stone Mountain, had been arrested 19 times before and was a convicted felon, according to the Atlanta police chief. Story number two. Again, here's the headline. Man accused of opening fire in downtown Atlanta food court, injuring 3. The man, Atlanta police say, shot 3 people in a food court at Peachtree Center in downtown Atlanta Tuesday afternoon before he was shot by the APD has been identified. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says 34-year-old convicted felon Jeremy Malone of Morrow got into an argument inside the food court just after 2 p.m. He's accused of shooting the person he was arguing with before continuing to shoot, injuring 2 more people. Early Friday morning, Malone was booked into the Fulton County Jail on charges including aggravated assault, cruelty to children, and more. They identified the victims as a 47-year-old man and a 69-year-old woman and a 70-year-old woman. Identities have not been released. And now, here's the sentence you need to hear. Police said Malone had served time in prison and had 11 previous arrest cycles. So 2 stories. A suspect hijacked a bus in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and murdered someone on the bus. He had been arrested 19 times and was a convicted felon, but he had a gun. Another man, Malone, opened fire in a downtown Atlanta food court, injuring 3 people. He had served time in prison as a convicted felon and had 11 prior arrests. And he had a gun. You know, conservatives believe we should enforce the law. Felons, like Hunter Biden or Donald Trump, not allowed to own a gun. Hunter Biden's going to jail for his gun crimes. How are these 2 people on the streets to begin with, let alone with guns? Rudy Giuliani is a sad, sad figure. Giuliani's a sad figure. Let's admit it. He's beclowned himself over time with the stolen election stuff, how he handled himself, having the press conference at what he thought was the Four Seasons Hotel, and it turned out to be the Four Seasons lawn care company or whatever. He's become the butt of jokes. He's filed for bankruptcy. He slandered Ruby Freeman, the Atlanta poll worker, lied about her, caused her nights of terror, death threats, harassment, lied about her. He's getting, frankly, what he deserves. But he was also America's mayor. He was a great mayor. He was mayor on 9/11. And he was a very good mayor. And after him, Mike Bloomberg got elected. Bloomberg wasn't a Republican, but he ran as a Republican because there were so many people in the Democratic Party. He knew he could consolidate power and knew that he could win by running as a Republican, even though he ran in New York. And then he became an independent again. He's never a Republican. He's very liberal. But it was an easy path for him to victory. But what Giuliani and Bloomberg both did is they embraced the broken window theory of crime. The left has spent enormous energy discrediting the broken window theory of crime. There have been whole articles written about how it doesn't work, except what the experts who tell you it's not working have to do is tell you not to believe your eyes. It's been a massive left-wing propaganda campaign against it. The broken window theory of crime is very simple. If you see a building with a broken window, you enforce the code on it and force the building owner to fix the broken window, because if you don't fix the broken window, eventually people are going to realize no one lives there, and the homeless are going to move in, the gangs are going to move in, drug activity is going to happen, and then you're going to have bad things happen in the neighborhood. The neighborhood's going to go down. So you enforce the small ball stuff. The big stuff never gets out of control, and it works. Every city that has used the broken window theory of crime has seen a decrease in overall crime and an increase in the quality of life. But the left vilified it, revised it, redacted it, changed it, propagandized against it, scared people about it, said it was over-criminalization, it was overly harsh, it was overly nasty, it wasn't very effective, despite your eyes. I mean, look, Bill de Blasio came in and bought the data and rejected the broken window theory of crime, got very lax. And what's happened to crime in New York? It's skyrocketed. Asian violence in New York, violence against Jews, violence in Manhattan, murders, robberies, shootings, and now New York said, we're just not going to report our crime to the FBI. We're just not going to report our crime. It's going to make it all look good. We're just not going to report it. We don't want people to know about it. People don't feel safe. They don't believe it. And the left that for years has said our lived experience must be valued over everything else says, now let's actually believe the data. Let's believe the statistics. Let's believe the statistics. Let's not believe what's actually happening. Your eyes are lying to you. In Atlanta, Georgia, in the last 24 hours, one man committed murder hijacking a bus. Another shot up a food court, shooting 3 people. Both of them were convicted felons who should not have had guns. In New York, Mike Bloomberg embraced stop and frisk. He was accused of racial profiling, and Michael Bloomberg's response, upheld by federal courts, was, no, we're just going where gun crime is bad. It just so happens to be that it's in inner city, predominantly black neighborhoods, but that's where the gun crime is bad, and so we're deploying our police based on the statistics of gun crime, not based on the statistics of race. And we're stopping people who seem suspicious and checking them for guns, and we're arresting them if they have guns, and it worked. Maybe it's time for us to get back to that. How did 2 convicted felons have guns? It's against the law for them to have guns. So how do they have guns? Where do they get the guns from? How does this continue to happen? Left-wing prosecutors are discrediting the left-wing project to rethink how we do crime. The George Soros-funded prosecutors have made America a more dangerous place. And so now what are they doing to try to claim that they're working? They've just simply stopped reporting their data to the FBI. So the national media runs stories saying, hey, look, crime is down. MSNBC runs stories. Hey, look, crime is down. CNN runs stories. Hey, look, crime is down. And they never tell you that the progressive enclaves with the George Soros prosecutors, they've simply instructed the police to stop reporting the crime to the FBI, and it makes everything look better in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Baltimore, Nashville, Seattle, and other progressive enclaves with progressive prosecutors funded by George Soros's Open Foundation. What do? They just stopped reporting crime, and reliably, predictably, the National Press Corps is running the story saying, hey, crime is down. Pay no attention to the fact that none of these major cities experiencing violent crime increases are reporting their crime, so the statistics can be rigged, and you don't believe your lying eyes. You racist bigots, stop believing what's happening in your neighborhood and listen to the statistics of unreported crime.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you like to be on the program? The AJC, by the way, a couple of callers said there are actually some new details about this bus hijacking story. It's kind of wild. So there was a shooting in Atlanta at a food court. Joseph Greer, 39 years old, was at an intersection across from Peachtree Center. He spoke to reporters about the shooting that injured 4 people 30 minutes before he's accused of leading officers on a high-speed chase and killing someone. He actually interviewed with reporters, so he was a witness to the shooting at the food court. The guy who hijacked the bus was a witness to the food court shooting. Now this I'm reading here now from the Atlanta Journal. This is kind of wild. We now have the answer where he got his gun from. During the rambling 5-minute interview, Greer mentioned he hid at a nearby Wells Fargo and heard several shots. He discussed his criminal records and ways he said he could have taken care of the situation. He says, I didn't have a gun, so I can't just say I'm going to kill you real quick. If you're close enough, I can grab your neck and rip your throat. At that point, we just made sure he didn't go around the corner. I'm bigger than that dude. He got a little pistol. That's not going to do anything. I take it from him. About 30 minutes later, dispatchers got their first call about a gunman who was holding 17 people hostage on a bus. Turns out after being interviewed by the press about because he was a felon, he couldn't own a gun and have stopped the shooter, Greer got into a fight with a man who pulled out a gun on the bus. Greer took the gun away from the man and started threatening passengers. He then shot the man in the head and ordered the bus driver to flee the scene while continuing to threaten passengers. Okay, we got to acknowledge this is now a wild story, isn't it? So the first guy, Malone, gets in a fight at the food court, pulls out a gun and starts firing, hits 3 people, none of them dead. Second guy was at the food court, runs and hides, starts complaining to reporters that he was a felon and therefore he wasn't allowed to own a gun. And if he was allowed to have owned a gun, he would have had a bigger gun than the guy at the food court and would have been able to shoot the guy at the food court. And as it was, the gun was so small that the guy at the food court was using. If he had gotten close, he could have ripped it out of his hand, but he didn't because he was hiding at a Wells Fargo because he didn't have a gun. A little bit crazy. Then gets on a bus, is agitated, gets into an argument with the guy who pulls out his concealed carry weapon, gets into a fight. Greer takes the gun from the guy, shoots him in the head, killing him, and then holds the bus hostage. What a wild day in Atlanta. Good gracious. The wild west in Atlanta. Boy, oh. All right, we got to move on. Old Glory Bank wants to be your bank. I was actually on a nice conversation yesterday with the folks at Old Glory Bank, and really nice guys, and it's a great bank. It was started by conservatives for conservatives. I joined Old Glory Bank as a bank. I needed a bank last year. Needed to move some accounts around. And I decided to use Old Glory Bank. A friend of mine was involved with it, and I just thought it was a neat concept. It's an online bank, but they've worked very innovatively to make it so you can go to like retail locations and deposit cash in your bank account and stuff. I told you the other day, I lost my debit card, was able to use the app to freeze the debit card until I made sure I hadn't lost it. I hadn't. I was able to reactivate it again. It's just highly innovative. You can get an account with them. I have a checking account and a savings account with them. They've got a good interest rate on the savings account. They've got no fees for checking or savings. You go to oldglorybank.com, oldglorybank.com. You get an account. I did it online. Took less than 8 minutes, maybe 5 minutes online. It's an easy process. OldGloryBank.com. Get an account for your kids. Again, no fee checking, no fee savings. The babysitting money can go in. OldGloryBank.com. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. My fellow Americans, I hope you're doing well. I got to play you a couple of sound bites. You know, the same day Hunter Biden is convicted of gun crimes, Joe Biden attends Everytown USA gun violence talk. This is one of the things he said.
I've attended too many mass shootings. I've gone to too many schools across America.
Joe Biden's attended too many mass shootings. Yeah, he corrected himself. But he keeps doing this stuff. He's attended too many mass shootings. But also this line he keeps using.
Though, give me a break. No, I mean it, seriously. And by the way, if they want to think to take on government if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, well, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle. Folks, look, this is crazy what we're talking about. Because whether we're Democrats or Republicans, we want our families to be...
Okay. This is a line Joe Biden keeps coming back to, that you want to take on the government with your guns, you need F-15s. Essentially, hey, if you want to hold your government accountable, we're going to murder you. That's what Joe Biden is essentially saying. But it's also kind of a dumb response. It sounds great to Democrats, except, you know, the founders really did have the Second Amendment in place should the need arise for the citizenry to take on the government. Now, you can say, well, the government's got nukes and F-15s, but the American government's not going to go in and start launching nukes at American civilians inside the United States. Well, not yet, at least. But this gets to something else I've been thinking about it, and I might as well. I wasn't going to, but I don't even have any of the show notes to talk about this, but I think I'm going to. There are a lot of people, loud voices on social media at least, on the left and the right, who have talked more and more about a national divorce, and I'll lay all my cards on the table with you. One, I don't think we're going to have some great national divorce or civil war. Two, if we had a civil war, the conservatives would lose, and here's why. Because you think we're the ones who have all the guns, and it's true, a lot of us do. The problem is the left controls all the major cities, ports, entryways, exitways, hubs of rail, hubs of aviation. Good luck with that. I mean, you every major port in America is in a blue city. Every major rail hub is in a blue city. Every major airport is in a blue city. Good luck getting your food and clothing and all your other stuff into your red area when it's got to go through those blue areas. It's a very simplistic idea to say, oh, we got all the guns, we're going to win. No, but it's not going to happen. We're not going to have a civil war. There are those on the left and the right who want this great divorce, who want to break apart the country, who are agitating. Look at the left right now. The level of hostility from the left towards the Supreme Court, because it's an institution they don't control. They are working with the American press corps. The people who claim that Republicans are a threat to democracy are working overtime with the American press, exercising their First Amendment rights to discredit, destabilize, and deconstruct the American Supreme Court because they don't control it. The left is very good at institutional capture. We're watching the left capture the right now. There's an organization called American Compass. It's run by a guy named Orrin Cass. If it sounds familiar, Orrin Cass was an economic advisor to Mitt Romney. He's on the left. Orrin Cass is a liberal. Worked for Mitt Romney. He's a liberal. And yet Orrin Cass has decided to recast left-wing economics as right-wing. He's taken money from the Aldemeyer Foundation, or whatever you call it, that funds Bill Kristol's The Bulwark. From the Hewlett Foundation that funds Planned Parenthood. He's taken money from them, and now he's trying to say that left-wing economics is right-wing, that the right should embrace a social welfare state, the right should embrace more government spending, the right should reject free market principles, the right should embrace unionization, should have greater ties with the Teamsters and the UAW, and he's running stories, and the media is helping him. It's so easy for the left to plant stories, including this American Compass is running stories that that people have have overstated support of the free market on the right. If conservatives, do you support the free market? Because he says you don't. He's taking money from the left, and it's the left co-opting the right. The left called itself progressive, then they called themselves liberals. Now they've called themselves progressives. Now they're calling themselves the new right. They just rebrand, and that's what's happening. It's the left trying to co-opt institutions of the right. Now, one of the dangers is that this group is participating in Project 2025, trying to staff the Trump administration with a bunch of old school left-wing economists. It's a dangerous thing. Here's the problem with Joe Biden's rhetoric and the left and that this administration that claims to want to talk about norms. You got Merrick Garland out there saying that, no, the Justice Department is not political. Well, then why aren't you prosecuting all the anti-Semites? Why didn't you enforce the law about no protests outside Supreme Court justices' houses? Why are you rounding up 75-year-old grandmothers in wheelchairs who prayed at abortion clinics instead of going after the anti-Semites who blocked access to libraries on college campuses? It's because the Justice Department is highly politicized, whether Merrick Garland realizes it or not, and he does. Problem here, and this is the dangerous thing, we're not going to have a civil war in this country. If we can't figure out how to get along as a society, how we're supposed to love our neighbors, even if we don't like them, we're not going to have a civil war. There's going to be no great divide between red states and blue states. There's going to be no separation. There's going to be no independent Republic of Texas or independent Republic of California. I can tell you what we're going to have, and it's worse. It's worse than a civil war. It's worse than a national divorce. We're going to have the Troubles. We're going to have the Troubles. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Troubles lasted for 30 years. The Troubles were the ethno-nationalist war in Northern Ireland and Great Britain. Lord Mountbatten assassinated, the attempts to assassinate the royal family, to assassinate Margaret Thatcher. Neighborhood by neighborhood, people waking up in the morning, going to work, having a car bomb take them out. Terrorism, paramilitary groups, neighborhoods divided based on religion and national loyalty. It's a horrible thing. A civil war is destructive, deadly, violent, and swift. The Troubles lasted 30 years, killing lots of people randomly. There is a piece of music I love. Genuinely, it is one of my favorite pieces of music. And it's not a traditional classical piece of music. It's a piece of music that was written, I believe, as a for a movie. It was in a soundtrack. You've probably heard this, called Spiegel am Spiegel. It's a beautiful piece of work. Goes from there. It's a beautiful, remarkable piece of work by David Troy Francis. It's from a movie called Elegy, and it has just become a brilliant piece of classical music. And I remember hearing a lady on the BBC describe Spiegel am Spiegel. She's a single mom. Her daughter is a nurse in Belfast, and her daughter had gone to see this movie and heard the music and found the music, went out and bought the CD at the time, and wanted her mother to hear the music was in love with it, knew her mother loved classical music, and her mother had this idea that modern classical music is not classical music, and she's describing this on the BBC, that her daughter was so insistent to prove her mother wrong, that here was a piece of classical music that was not classically written, it was modern, it was for a movie, and yet her mother was sure to love it, and she did. She loved Spiegel im Spiegel. It's a beautiful piece of music. And the mother says she listens to that piece of music every day because her daughter was so insistent that she was right, that finally she had found a modern work of classical music that her mother would embrace. It wasn't Beethoven, Brahms, Mozart. It wasn't Bach. It wasn't Elgar. It wasn't any of the famous composers. It wasn't Handel. It was a piece of work written for a movie, and her mother would love it, and she did. And her daughter was so happy. She had finally proved her mother wrong, and she headed off to work. She was a nurse at a hospital, and the bus exploded 5 blocks from their house because the Irish Republican paramilitaries blew it up. The daughter died in the Troubles. If we can't figure out how to get along as a nation, that's where we're headed. Not to a civil war. And there are people on the left and there are people on the right who want it. They want it. They're begging for it. Prosecutors in Atlanta, Georgia have arrested someone, and federal authorities have arrested a guy from Arizona who went to Atlanta and was selling guns on the cheap to as many people as he could sell them to because he wanted to start a race war before the 2024 election. Dylan Roof wanted to start a race war when he shot up the AME church in Charleston, South Carolina. He wanted to start a race war. There are people who want this to happen, but there are progressives and people on the right who have both thought, we got more guns. We got the violence on our side. We could take out the other side. We could win this thing. And there are people on both sides who want to do it. They don't want to love their neighbor. They want to rule over their neighbor. And now I'll lay even more of my cards on the table. And I'll tell you the worst part about this is that the left and the media together are sowing the seeds of this destructive troubles because the media has picked the left's side so thoroughly, so ruthlessly. They're willing to amplify manufactured scandal and lies. They're willing to downplay real scandal that hurts the left. The president of the United States himself is willing to go give speeches and say, you want to take on the government? You need an F-15. You may think you got all the guns. We've got the big weapons. We'll take you out. The president of the United States can't call out his own side. He needs his own side and the festering energy of that side to win his reelection. He vilifies everyone on the right. He claims they're all a bunch of white nationalists. He says Charlottesville, Virginia is why he ran for office, and he's not willing to stand up and exercise moral clarity against his own side when they get out of line, which is the definition of a real leader, being willing to tell their own side unpopular things and do what's right, damn the consequences. He won't do that. He's being led around by the left. And the troubles come closer to us because of it. Both sides are playing. I'm not abdicating the right. I'm not excusing the right. There are willfully people on the right doing this as well. You got this whole segment of the right that's embracing a real Christian nationalism where they think they need to take over and impose their will. You got people on the right who are pushing this idea that we need to seize power, take power, and refuse to give it up and stop having elections. It's a real problem on both sides. It's not one or the other, and too many people on the left want you to highlight the ones on the right. Too many people on the right want you to highlight the ones on the left. It's a real problem coming, and you need to understand what it's going to look like. There will not be a swift, violent civil war in this country if we stop getting along and working together as a nation and trying to impose our values on each other instead of radically embracing the federalism our founders thought would be our salve. No, there will be the troubles. It lasted 30 years in Northern Ireland. How long will it last here? That's the vision of America that's coming. If we can't realize that, sometimes California, you got to leave the rest of us alone and just let California be California, and everywhere else, Let everyone else have their own values. Let Texas be Texas and California be California, and the federal government do as little as possible instead of trying to relentlessly control our lives from the right or the left. Let the states and the local communities in the states decide these things. Otherwise, something wicked this way will come, and we will all regret it. Some of you regret the stinky odors in your house, and that's why you need the Eden Pure Thunderstorm to wipe out those odors. You can get 3 of them and save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. You can buy the Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack. It traps the dust, it traps the pollen, it traps the mildew, but what it really shines at is odor elimination, whether it's litter box odors, wet dog odors, nasty dog pet odors, frying odors, cooking odors, musty odors, you name it, it gets rid of them. You get 3 of them, one for upstairs, downstairs, your basement, or your attic, or your RV, or your travel bag. I actually have mine with me. Thankfully, I don't need to use it. This place is great. This shack was built in 1873, and I was a little bit concerned with it. My sister warned me, but it's actually great. But I had my Eden Pure Thunderstorm because it's so small I can hold it in my hand. It travels with me, and it works great. You can plug it up with a USB cord. I could fire it up by plugging it into my laptop if I needed to, or into the wall. And it packs a wall up, and it works. Get 3 of them, save $200. You go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3. EdenPureDeals.com, the discount code ERIC3. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson, and I am delighted to have you here with me today. Rachel Maddow is concerned that Donald Trump will put her in a camp during his second term. She said she was actually worried about that. In an interview with Oliver Darcy of CNN, he asked her about her concerns about being targeted, and she said, quote, this is Darcy first. Trump and his allies are openly talking about weaponizing the government to seek revenge against critics in media and politics, with some of his extremist allies even talking about jailing their federal fellow Americans. You're one of his most notable critics on television. Are you worried you could be a target? She says, I'm worried about the country broadly if we put someone in power who's openly avowed that he plans to build camps to hold millions of people to root out what he describes in subhuman terms as enemies from within. And on and on and on. And she adds, for that matter, what convinces you that these massive camps he's planning are only for immigrants? So yes, I'm worried about me, but only as much as I'm worried about all of us. Oh, good grief. You know, the MSNBC has inspired the last 2 mass assassination political attempts in this country. Floyd Lee Corkins and James Hodgkins, they keep playing with this sort of fire. Here's the thing. I don't believe that these people really believe it. In fact, I think a lot of the more outrageous stuff you hear in conservative and progressive talk, that the hosts themselves don't believe it. They're play acting. They're pretending to be something. They're not authentically telling you what they believe, but they're hoping you believe what they're selling you because, one, it keeps you coming back for more of their Gnostic secret insight into how they know what's happening in the world, but also they're getting you to return through an addiction to fear and paranoia. You got to come back to this person to find out when are they coming to round you up. It was like the FEMA camps on the right. You went from FEMA camps on the right to Trump camps on the left. It's the same paranoia. It's the same lie, just repackaged for the left. And it's all premised on this Gnosticism, this basically Gnostic from Greek knowledge, that there's a secret knowledge. And if you listen to these certain people, whether it's Steve Bannon or Rachel Maddow, they're going to give you the secret knowledge of how the world works so you can navigate the world. And it's where so many conspiracy theories and stuff come from, these crazy people. And on the left, they have turned people violent. James Hodgkinson, Floyd Lee Corkins, they were MSNBC viewers. And the left wants no accountability for the violence on their side. Look at the pro-Hamasniks out there and the anti-Semitism. They want you to believe it's all right-wing nationalists who are a threat. And the media, of course, is on their side and protects them. These are wild times we live in, and all I can tell you is you've got to make an effort to love your neighbor whether you want to or not, because that's the solution to getting us through these crazy times.